week 2. Sorry, we were just trying to change some of the settings, and that's why we were getting some technical issues. We will figure it out, hopefully, before week 6, so you can have a better experience. So welcome to week 2. So last week, we were trying to kind of set the landscape, if you like. We were trying to talk about why are you here? And some of those reasons might have been, maybe people are struggling, maybe they're suffering, maybe they're stuck, or just curious, just searching or looking for a practical understanding of Gurbani. And so in this week, we're going to go deeper than that. We're going to go into not just the why. We also talked about why Darshan Benji and I are here, how Simran has changed, transformed our lives. But this week, we want to go a little bit deeper. So we want to go into why is Gurbani, why is our Guru telling us to do the Simran? What are the deeper reasons for why we do that? So before we go into that, just a quick reminder of our course agreement. So if you can, as much as possible, it would be really great if more people could actually put their videos on, just to get that little bit of engagement as well. So try to be as present as you can, reduce any distractions, try to close the tabs on your phone, on your computers. Again, there's only a very small percentage of what we take in of what was being said in this presentation. So if we have other distractions, that's going to reduce that to even less. Whatever we think we know, try to be open and engaged and have that curious mind. Could this be true? Do your own research. Don't just take what Benji and I say on face value. Go into Gurbani, do that Khoj, and do that Simran and start to have that experience for yourself. And again, this course is not just about knowledge. That's just half. That's 50% is understanding what we're doing. But just as equally as important, if not more important, as the knowledge is there, what becomes more and more important after that is actually having that practice of the Simran. There's so many people like me who used to know so much Gurbani Kant, memorized Gurbani. I could tell you what it meant. I could tell you different sakhiyan for every experience that anybody has in life. But because at that time I wasn't doing the experience, I wasn't having the experience of the Simran, or I was just doing the Simran but not really knowing what I was doing, that progress wasn't happening. It still only had limited value. And we all know people in our lives, not to judge, but just as a factual thing, where people can know lots of Gurbani, they can have the roop, they can have the external form of a Gursikh, but when they're showing up in life, they're still struggling, they're still suffering, or there's conflict in their lives. And for me, that game changer, not that I never have that, it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up. It's just so much quicker to get back up, and it's a lot less. And so why has that changed? It's because that practice of Simran is there. So just before we get into it in a bit more detail, it'd be great to know over the chat what your experience has been of that Simran so far. So whether you've been doing it before, or whether you were listening to the recording or doing it in your own way, it will be great to know how your experience has been going over the chat. So I'm just going to admit a bunch of more people while we're doing that. So Darshan Benji, if there's anything coming up, if you don't mind just reading those off.
Okay, so we've got some comments coming up in the chat. Yeah, people saying been feeling more connected since last week, less conflict with myself, thoughts calmer, less people are around me are less reactive. Wow.
Right.
I did it a few times listening, and it helps the mind to focus a little bit more than before. Feeling much more focused in meditation, feeling peaceful. Going to groups, online courses help to do Simran, helps to focus more. We've got somebody who's saying Simran has become my go-to for almost all emotions.
Vaheguru.
Amazing. I've been doing the 10 minutes every day since we started, and I do meditation, but I'm starting to extend the time, less reactive, feeling more grounded at the start of each day. My experience of Nam Simran has been positive first thing. However, I'm still struggling to reconnect throughout the day, but I do feel calmer within myself. Yeah,
Amazing. Amazing.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's really important to acknowledge how that Simran is changing, because our mind is such, or as we'll find out today, the Panchjord within us are such that we'll forget very quickly the benefits of what we're experiencing. Um, and so sometimes we can be doing the Simran, we're experiencing those benefits, feeling grounded, dealing with our emotions, feeling more peaceful, feeling blissful, even noticing that difference, I think was in one of the comments of how the people around you seem to have changed as well. But what happens is we start doing it and then you have a bad day or you miss a day, and then there's Panchjord within us. They start to convince us that actually it's not working. I don't know what I'm doing. It's too difficult. And so when we say this out loud in the Sadh Sangat, that's what this Sangat is for, to keep reminding each other that it does work and that we've got to keep going. Anything we want to do, we have to practice it. We have to keep going at it so we can get better at it. So it's really important that we spend this time every week to just remind ourselves and remind each other of how this Simran is really helping us. And we're just talking about 10 minutes at the moment. Just imagine a few, weeks or months down the line where we're going much deeper as we're learning this kahani, this story through Gurbani about why this Simran is so important. Just imagine how life transforming that's going to be as we go deeper into this. So I'm going to get started now. So I'm just going to give it a quick overview of what Gurbani is saying, and then Darshan Benji is going to come in and give a lot more detail in her beautiful way of what is that story of the mind, what is that game of life that Maharaj is telling us, and how does this Sikh meditation, or how does this Simran fit into that? So, like I said, last week we were exploring the reasons why we're here, the two of us as facilitators and the Sangat that are joining. But Maharaji tells us, this is in Rera Sahib, so we read this every day, every evening. We are reminding ourselves of what our purpose is in this life. So nowadays we talk a lot about purpose in kind of the self-development world. It's my purpose to be a counselor or a coach, or it's my purpose to be an entrepreneur or do this seva. But Maharaj is telling us what our true purpose is, our essential purpose is. Bani Guru is telling us, Pei Parapat Manuk Dehuriya Gobind Milanki He Teri Bariya, that this human life has been given to us, this precious human life, because it's our bariya, it's our turn to meet Vaheguru. Gobind Milanki He Teri Bariya. So that is our true purpose according to Gurbani Guru within this life. That goes beyond, what little sevas that we're doing. Those can be important as well. But this is our ultimate purpose. Kei janam mein keet patanga. Maharaj is saying through many lifetimes, we've been little ants. We've been different 8.4 million lives that we've gone through. We've been different life forms. But it's only in this human life where we get this opportunity, this turn, this body to meet Vaheguru, because we have that capacity within the human form. And Maharaj kende avar kaaj tere kite naakam, nothing else will work. We might go around, like I said, memorizing all this part. We might go around doing all this seva. And I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad. That stuff is good. But those actions within themselves, unless the Simran is also happening, they are not going to bring us to meet Vaheguru. The example that we often talk about is if you want to be a doctor, Just reading a book about being a doctor, having all that gyan, all that knowledge about being a doctor doesn't make you a doctor. What makes you a doctor is you have to do that practical alongside it. You have to pass those exams as well. There's so much more to it. And then it's only once you get in there, you've done your exams, you've done your, your practical of going into the hospital. And then on day one, when you're actually there, you're actually treating the patients, do you become a doctor? And you need that support of other doctors, those teachers, to teach you how to become a proper doctor. But in the same way, if we know that our purpose is to meet Vaheguru within this human life, what is our map? What is our plan? How do we think that's going to happen? Is it going to happen by going to the Gurdwara every Sunday? Is it going to happen through just reading Gurbani and our mind is all over the place? How is it going to happen? Are we just waiting? Sometimes we use this word kismat, je mere kismat vich hoga. If it's written in my destiny, it will just happen one day. We will have spontaneous enlightenment. And that might happen for some people, very rarely. But Maharaji, this Gurbani is for every single one of us. Maharaji is telling, this is your turn. Why? Because you have a human life. Just because you have a human life, you get this turn to meet Vaheguru. And nothing else is going to work in that instant. So a lot of what we're doing, is because we're feeling unfulfilled. Why are we looking for all these external purposes? We think our purpose is about what job we want to do. Even if we look back on our parents' generation, a lot of our mothers, their purpose was to bring up their children and they went to work. Our fathers was to look after their family, but they didn't look for anything outside of that because there was fulfillment within that. Generations before that, and even now, those who are walking on this path of spirituality, of Sikhi, that they recognize that fulfillment that they're looking for is actually going to come from that connection to Vaheguru, through that connection to Nam. So how Maharaj is telling us nothing else will work. Mil sad sangat bhaj keva Nam. So just as we were speaking about, it's that sad sangat. How do we recognize the sad sangat? That doesn't mean just anybody at the Gurdwara. It doesn't mean anybody who's wearing their panch kakar or who's amritari. Maharaj kende sad sangat kaisi jani hai jithe eko naam bakhani hai. How do we recognize that sad sangat kaisi jani hai? Eko naam vakhani hai. That sangat, sad sangat, is the one that is talking about Vaheguru, that is meditating on Vaheguru, that is having that experience of Vaheguru. That is the sad sangat. So if you want to go, I think there was a participant in this call, someone from Sangat who's in Malaysia. If you want to go to Malaysia, you might read about the country, you might try to learn the language. But the best way to know about Malaysia is to ask, I think it was, I don't know, is it Benji or Aviji? Ask them about it because they live there. They live there. They go there all the time. They know the language. They know where to go, where not to go. In the same way, the Sad Sangat, the Gurmukh, the Sant, the Sadhu, the one who's walking this path, who's doing the Simran, they are meeting Vaheguru, they're having this experience of Vaheguru. So when we follow the Sad Sangat, when we meet with them, when we do Simran with them, and they're vibrating on a much higher level because they're having that experience of Vaheguru, that makes all the difference. So we have our own practice as well. And we have Gurbani to help us to understand as well. But we also need that Sahara, that support of the Sadh Sangat. So why are we doing this Simran? It's to meet Vaheguru. Where is Vaheguru? I've done Maharaj Kirpana a couple of talks at schools. And if you ask the primary school children, even the secondary school children, where's Vaheguru? They often point upwards, right? And yes, that's true as well. But Vaheguru is not that white man or that black man, depending on which film you've watched, that man in the sky who's looking down upon us, right? That's a very, I don't even want to say an Abrahamic point of view about who God is or who Vaheguru is, because if you go into the mystical traditions of any religion, They are not talking about a man in the sky. They're talking about what Maharaj is telling us, which is Sab mein jyot, jyot hai soe. That jyot, that light of Vaheguru is within every single one of us. Man tu jyot saroop hai apna mool pachan. So it's about recognizing that light of Vaheguru is inside all of us and is all around us. Sab Gobind hai, Sab Gobind hai. Gobind bin nahi koi. Everything's Vaheguru, everything's Vaheguru. There's nothing but Vaheguru. Haath pair nere, they're closer than our hands and our feet. And so it's that relationship that we want to form. Our purpose is apna mool pachan. Recognize who you truly are. Recognize your source. Recognize who are you beyond this body. Because this body changes from when we're a baby to now. It goes through these cycles. All of our cells change. We have a completely different body now that we had when we were a baby. The content of our mind is always changing. We think very differently this week than what we thought last week, let alone, over the years. And we are not our thoughts, because our thoughts are always changing. Our thoughts lie to us. Our memories lie to us. When we have anxiety about the future, those are lies because it hasn't happened yet. So we're not the content of our mind either. We're not those thoughts. We're not our status. We're not our family. We're not our trauma and those experiences that happened to us in the past. Maharaj is reminding us again and again, we don't need to hold on to any of that stuff. In fact, we need to let go. Aap gavaiya, lose yourself and recognize who you really are, that you are the embodiment of that light. We can't go and then say, I'm Vaheguru, because it's like we're a drop in that ocean, right? Boond mein sagar, sagar mein boond, that drop within the ocean. So we're not the whole complete ocean, but we're a drop within that. And if you took that drop and you inspected it under a microscope, you would expect to see the same characteristics within that drop that's within that ocean. So if Vaheguru is the ocean of peace, of bliss, of forgiveness, of patience, of strength, then that is our natural form. Just like that newborn baby has those qualities, has those guna, those virtues, that's who we are. And ultimately, what the Simran allows us to do is to go beyond those thoughts that are keeping us stuck within our home there, this self-identity, this false ego. As we start to get rid of those thoughts, vichar, mare, tare, tare, we start to transcend them. What we do is we peel the layers away of that false home, that false identity, what those banchor are implanting in our mind, and we start to have that real experience of that light within us, that jyot that is within us. So that's in a nutshell. Another reason is simply Gurbani keh sevak jana mane partak guru nistare. That if all of Gurbani is the experience of those gurus, of those bhagats, of those bhatts, of those people who were experiencing Vaheguruji, that were having darshan, that were hearing Anhad Shabad, that had milap, and they were giving their experiences in Gurbani. So if we want to be successful at anything in the world, we will follow the people who have gone before us, who have had that success that we want, whether that's on a worldly level or a spiritual level. So if Guru Maharaj is saying, do this, simaro, simar, simar sukh pavo, ik duji baho lakh hai, lakh hove lakh 20, lakh lakh gera aakiya, ek naam Jagdish. Chant that name again and again with this tongue. If Guru's telling us that because they've experienced it, then it's our job to man that, to accept that, and to do that. And then that Guru within becomes manifest within us. Guru Gobind Singh Ji tells us, Vaheguru, Guru Japi, Vaheguru Kar Dhyan. So again and again, whether it's Gurbani, whether it's Dasam Padshah's Gurbani as well, they're telling us again and again to do this act of Simran. It's the Karni. So Benji is going to continue and go deeper into that story of Gurbani, using that reference of Gurbani, and to explain that story of who we are in much more depth. So, Hanji, I'll hand over to you, Benji.
Waheguru Ji Ka
Shall I make you admin, Benji?
Hanji, that's fine. So yeah, I'm gonna attempt to use physical whiteboard here. So what we're gonna do whilst we get everything ready is just to center the mind, to elevate the mind so that we can connect with the message of Gurbani. We're gonna just do the Simran using the methodology we've shared, which is chanting, listening, putting the attention in the sound of our voice. And Sangatji, the reason that we're doing this now, before we start to understand the game in more depth, is that our mind is stuck within a low vibration state, you could say, within Tregun. And we will talk about Tregun as the weeks progress. But ultimately, the mind that is stuck in thoughts in low vibration state cannot really grasp the depth of Gurbani. So, which is why Benji Amati was saying that many of us, including myself, have spent years and years and years reading Gurbani again and again, multiple times a day, hours upon hours, and still not really understood that essence. Gurbani tells us, "Tre gun pade, har tat na jane," that when the mind is stuck in a low vibration state within those tre gun, the mind cannot understand that essence, that tat of Hari. So Sangatji, before we start sharing more of the Kahani according to Dhan Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, we're just going to bring that mind into a state of presence once more. We're going to chant, listen to the sound of our voice, and forget everything in this material realm as much as we can, fully immersing ourselves in that sound, such that there becomes no separation between us and that sound. Vaheguru, 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 Guru, Vai, 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 Guru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vai, Guru Ji Ki Fateh. So, Sangat Ji, we're going to try and understand this game of life, this game of love. And Gurbani teaches us that this body, this existence that we have in this material realm, is a very minute part of the whole picture. And Gurbani teaches us that when we came into this life, that wasn't the beginning of the game. That wasn't the beginning of our existence. The beginning of our existence happened 4 yugs ago. Gurbani tells us there was Satyug, Dwapar, Treta, and now we're in the final stage of the game. And at the beginning of this game, at the beginning of these 4 yugs, what happened was that the mind was separated from Akal Purkh. So at the beginning, before we came into this existence, before there was human form, before there was any kind of form, before there were animals, before there was the sun and the moon, before there were the planets, before there was anything that has physical form, anything that was matter, all there was Paramatma, or supreme energy. And in Gurbani, that supreme energy, that divine, that creator and sustainer, that space, that void is called Sach. So at the beginning, all there was Sach. Gurbani tells us, Arpat narpat tundu kara, taran na gagan hukam apara, na din ran, na chand na suraj, sun samad langainda. That at the beginning, there was no day, there was no night. There was no sun, there was no moon. All there was Paramatma in that state of sun samad. And we were all merged. It was just Sach. And we were all a part of that Sach. Sagar mein boond, boond mein sagar. And then we became that drop that was sent to play. But that drop is not separate in its nature from that ocean. And that drop was once part of that ocean and inseparable. And that is the state that we were at the beginning of this game of life. And the whole of Gurbani is teaching us, how did we become separate? How did the mind get sent to play the game? And how can we merge back whilst we are living and experience that state of oneness, such in this physical body, in this realm, whilst we're playing this game? How can we experience that right here, right now? And Sangatji, why would we want to experience this oneness with Sach? And please feel free to write some comments on the chat. What would be the benefit of being able to experience ourselves as our truest form, as in connection to that source? And what Gurbani tells us is that in that state of connection, when there is no separation, the mind is in a state of ecstasy, in a state of bliss, because it's in its true form, and its true form is Paramatma. And we read from the Gurbani, we see from those love letters that the Bhagats write to their great lover, to Paramatma, how beautiful that love is. Though we don't yet know it ourselves, we may know glimpses of it. So when we do the Simran and the mind goes into Sed, we have a glimpse of what that great love must be like, because it feels so good inside. You know, we start to feel such a ease within ourselves, but we don't quite yet know the depth of it. And that's why we ask, we go to the Guru Granth Sahib Ji and we ask, you know, Sadh Sangat ke asare, Prabh syo rang lai, Pucho Sant, Mero Thakur kaisa. Because those Guru Sahiba and Bhagatan have had experience of their great love and are merged with that great love. And us, our minds are yet disconnected, have glimpses, but don't know the extent. So the other reason we want to experience this state of Sach, I'm just reading the comments, to Vaheguru, Vaheguru. So just reading the last few, feeling whole, nothing missing, connect with the spiritual world of Nam. Why would we not want to win this game of life? So this is it, that in this state of connection, there is a wholeness, because all of our anxiety, our stress, our depression, our loneliness, our boredom, all of that, we may have all kinds of ideas as to why we experience it. We say, okay, I've had this trauma or that trauma, or I'm lonely because I don't have the perfect partner or the right people around me. We make all of these narratives and ideas about why we are experiencing this sense of disconnection and loneliness and boredom and anxiety and depression. We have all these narratives. We have all these therapists telling us it's because of this, it's because of this, it's because of this. But what Gurbani tells us is that when you are in a state of separation from Paramatma, how can you not feel that loneliness? How can you not feel that anxiety? How can you not feel that boredom? So our mool, our job, our purpose, our task is to connect with that Sach and to experience that feeling of wholeness, bliss, anand, ecstasy that comes with connecting to our true nature. And this is what, with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, we are going to be experiencing more and more of as we go throughout this course, as we continue on this journey of connecting back to Sach, connecting back to source. So now we understand that we were one with Paramatma. There was no separation. So how did this separation happen? Because it's only if we understand how the separation happened that we can then merge back. Then we can understand, okay, so the separation happened in this way. So this is how we can merge back. So Gurbani tells us that at the beginning, Sach decided, had a vichar to create a world, a play, karta khel rachaya, to create some kind of game. And how did this game become created? So Gurbani tells us that there are two streams to this game. From Paramatma came two aspects. One is Nam, or Shabad. Can everybody read this? Okay. And one is Pavan, Pawn or air. Gurbani tells us that Sache te Pavana peya, Pavane te jal hoy, Jal te Tripavana sajye kat kat jot samoy. So as per the game, what happened is that from Sach came Pavan, came air, and it was from this that the other elements were created. And this aspect was the thing that created the material realm. Everything that is physical, material, that we can see, but there's two forms of Maya. So we have the visible, which is everything from our body onwards. Gurbani tells us, "E sarir sab mool hai Maya," that the sarir is the root, is where Maya starts. So inside is the jyot, inside is the truth, which is subtle, which we can't experience with these senses. And beyond that is everything is Maya. So the body, our possessions, other people's bodies, family members, anything that you can experience through these senses is material realm. That's the visible form of Maya. And then you have the invisible or sukham form of Maya. And Gurbani tells us that this brings about an even greater obstacle to connecting to our true form, because this is subtle, and this is our thoughts. In Gurbani it says, Rajogun, Tamogun, Satogun kahiye, e teri sab Maya. That there's three states of thoughts of mind: Rajogun, Tamogun, and Satogun. And these states create this sukham Maya within us, this separation from Paramatma. Is anybody familiar? Please feel free to write in the chat, familiar with these three states and heard about them before. So we're going to come back to this Tragon. It might be today, it might be another time, another session. We're going to come back up here. So as well as Bhavan, from Paramatma came the sound, the vibration, the Naam. And it is that was infused into the whole creation. So Gurbani tells us, Kita pasao eko gavao. That from Paramatma's mukh, tera mukh suhava jiyo, sahajatun bani, came the sound, came the vibration, came the sahajatun, came the Naam. And this was infused into the entire creation. So now, fast forward a little bit. When the baby is in the mother's womb, when that baby is just a fetus developing in that mother's womb, this fetus is connected to Naam and is kept safe with the protection of the Naam because of its connection to Naam. Gurbani tells us, Mata ke udar mein pritpal kare. So the baby in the mother's womb is looked after by that connection to Naam. But what happens is that when the baby is born, then the fetus, the mind is disconnected from the Naam now. And when the baby is born, the baby breathes its first breath. And what happens? It is now connected to Maya through that breath that it breathes. It forgets the Naam. It's disconnected from the Naam, and it comes into this physical body to play this game. And in connecting to the Bhavan, it is now disconnected to the Naam. Gurbani says, Liv Shurki Trishna Maya Amar Vartaya. When that live is broken, disconnected, that connection to Paramatma, that is when that's where the Trishna starts, the wanting, the desire to live in this material realm, to succeed, to thrive. When that baby is connected to the Naam, it is in a fire. We heard in Gurbani that this baby is in the fire of the womb, but it does not get burnt. It does not get hurt because it's connected to that Naam. And Gurbani says, Jaisi agan udar mein, taisi bahar Maya. In the same way that the baby is in that fire of the agan in the womb, when that baby is born, it comes out into the agan, the fire of the world, of the material realm. And so in a way, the baby is receiving training. We have all received that training many, many times because we have been in these wombs many, many times. And the baby is receiving the training that when you are connected to Naam, you don't feel the agan, you don't feel the fire. And the Gurmukhs tell us that when that baby kicks, that baby is actually in a state of disconnection. It feels that agan very temporarily, very momentarily. And it feels that agan, and then it connects right back to Naam because it knows that in connection to Naam, that fire cannot touch that baby. That is the training, that when we come into this world as beings living in this material realm, we start to learn as we go about living in this worldly realm, that when we are disconnected from Nam, when we do not know how to connect back to our true essence, to Paramatma, we experience the pain and the suffering of this material realm. And even when things are going very well in this material realm, like we think we have everything that we could ever ask for. We have the big house, we have the perfect family, 2.4 children, we have money coming in, we have nothing to want for. Yet, why do we still feel that pain? Why do we still feel that fire? Why do we still feel tormented inside? And Gurbani tells us that the reason why you feel pain is because of the separation. And the way that you will feel happiness and joy and anand is simply through connection, connecting back to that Nam. And so we're explaining this in detail because it links to our Simran practice. Why do we do Simran? So we try to take ourselves back to that state of that fetus connected to the Nam. When we do Simran, we try to take ourselves back. And how do we do that? When we chant the Guru Mantra, Vai Guru, Vai Guru, Vai Guru, and we are closing our eyes, what we are doing is two things. The first thing we are doing is when we're closing those 9 doors of the body. I didn't mention this, but when that baby is connected in that mother's womb, those 9 doors, the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the mouth, the 2 nostrils, and the 2 down below, those are the 9 doors of the body. And the 10th door is sukham, is subtle, is that dasam dwar. When that baby is in the womb, it is not getting input through its senses. Those senses, those 9 doors are closed. And it is because those 9 doors are closed that it can connect to the Nam. So through that Dasam Dwar being opened. And when that baby is born, then that Dasam Dwar becomes hidden and those 9 doors are opened. And so we do the reverse. When we do the Simran, we first close these eyes. So we're already limiting access to that visible Maya that we talked about. That's already becoming less. And then as we chant the Simran, that Sukham Maya that we talked about, those thoughts, Rajogun, Tamogun, Satogun Kahiye, E Teri Sab Maya. Rajogun is hopes, wishes, desires. Tamogun is negativity, slander, anger, greed. Satogun is those kind of thoughts of being a good person, doing good things, dharmic things. We will talk about this in more depth, but when we do the Simran and we listen to the sound of our voice, what we will find is over time, as we start to listen to that sound, the thoughts settle down. We have no awareness of those thoughts anymore. So here we are with this jugti, with this practice of the Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru. We are taking our mind back to how we were in that mother's womb. What slowly starts to happen is that when we overcome that Maya, that Sukha Maya, when the thoughts are no longer coming up, when we are now connected to that sound of our voice, simply the sound, then those 9 doors, they start to close. And we go into a state of sun. And there were some people on the chat that were talking about how they start to feel sleepy when they do the Simran, or they fall asleep when they do the Simran. And Gurbani tells us that is not sleep as we may think of it. That is actually us crossing over into the spiritual realm. That is when those 9 doors of the body close. That is now when we sleep, we have no input, do we? We have no input from this worldly realm. When we go to sleep at night, we can't see through our eyes. We don't hear what's happening in this material world. We don't taste anything. We have no inputs coming. The mind goes into its home at night when we sleep. Now, when we do the Simran, we take the mind intentionally to its home, to that state of sun, where we have no input from this worldly realm. And then what happens is, Sangatji, that we then awaken the subtle senses inside of us, those subtle eyes, those subtle ears, that can experience Paramatma. Those subtle senses that are attached to our true form, our subtle form, our Jyot, Man tu Jyot Sarup hai, Apna Mool Pashan. And that is how we start to experience and hear Paramatma again. We start to see Paramatma again. We start to taste the ras, the Nam ras, Amrit ras again, according to Gurbani. And so this is as the practice of Simran. That initial chanting is just to bring that mind into an ekagar place. The purpose is to come in that state of sun, come into that connection to Nam, because it's in the sun that we will experience that Anhat Shabad. And that is when, like that baby in the womb that is protected from the Agan, when that mind is connected to the Nam, goes into that sun again and again, and Paramatma does their kirpa and allows that man bacha to hear the Nam, that mind in connection to the Nam never has to suffer that fire, that torment. So, Sangatji, at this point, I'm going to pause and we're going to actually do some Simran right now. Before we take questions, before we go on to the chat, before Amandeep Benji helps to clarify the things that have been spoken about. Because what we're going to do now, we have the wisdom. This is all the wisdom we need, really. Gurbani tells us, Gurmukh Gyan Eko hai jata, An din Ram Ravi Jahe. That the only Gyan that the Gurmukh, the mind that is yearning to connect, needs to know is to chant that Nam. And now we have some understanding of what the chanting allows, where the chanting is going to take us. So with that understanding, with that yearning, and it might be a yearning to know our source again. It might be a yearning to have that darshan again, because it's been so long since we've seen our true mother and father, since we've heard their voice. We don't have Pashan anymore. And if the yearning arises inside of us to have that Pashan, have that connection, then let's hold on to that. And if the yearning is simply to overcome that suffering that we all experience, to cut through that fire, then let's hold that in our hearts as we chant. And now we know that the methodology has a reasoning behind it. So we're going to really try to stick to that methodology, that we're going to chant with the tongue, and we're going to place all of our attention in the sound of our voice so that we may enter into this divine realm. So Sangatji, let's begin. Vai Guru, 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 Guru, Vai Guru, Vai Guru, Vai Guru, Vai Guru, Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. And now chanting internally. So chanting with the mind and listening with the mind. And Gurbani tells us that when we close those 9 doors, then the mind becomes Parvesh in its true home, in that 10th door. And it is there that we start to hear that awaaj of Paramatma, that hukam, that instruction directly from Paramatma. Eko naam hukam hai. Gurbani tells us, "No dar thake tavat rahaye, dasme nij kar vasa paye, othe anhad shabad vajay din rati, gurmati shabad sunavane." So Sangat Ji, we're going to very slowly come back into the room, very slowly open the eyes. But whilst coming back into this material realm, seeing if we can keep our attention, our awareness, at least part of it, inside the body. And as we get better at doing this, even when we open the eyes and are flooded with information from this material realm, and those sponge inside of us immediately start to create thoughts again. If the mind learns how to keep one part connected to that true home, to that sehaj, then we still have that protection, we still have that barrier between the mind and the material realm. So at this point, Sangatji, I can see that there are some questions. And Benji, I'm going to ask you to respond to those. That's okay. And if there are any other questions on Sangat's mind as well, please do feel free to message here and also later on message in the WhatsApp group as well, because there's lots of questions. You know, I still have so many questions, and at this, when I started to learn about this story of the mind, I had so many questions. And this is a topic worth putting yourself out there, you know, overcoming that lokalajja, that sometimes embarrassment we have of putting ourselves forward. But for this, for Naam, for connection, it is worth putting that aside to ask any questions that come to mind.
Waheguru, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hanji. So we have one practical question, which is, why do we say Vai instead of Vahi when we're saying? So I was going to ask you to answer that, Benji.
I don't actually have a very good answer to that. But the only thing I can say is that, you know, the chanting, the mantra is only the very early stages. You know, this is, Amadip Benji was talking, doing some katha recently, and she was saying, this is Akrinam, that this is just the starting. So, you know, sometimes we might say the name of our mother or father slightly differently. Like some people say mama, some people say mummy, some people might say mataji, you know, but that doesn't take away from the love. So the crucial thing here is the love, that chanting with that loving intention. The specifics, in my understanding, don't really matter. And you have, you know, from people from other faiths, they will use different mantras like Ram and Allahu, and they can absolutely, using the same methodology and wisdom, connect to Paramatma too. So my sense is that the specifics doesn't actually really matter. But if anybody has a better answer than that, please do share.
So part of it, as I have understood it, is it's also to do with that breath that Benji was talking about. And it's a bit technical, but we'll try and do it in a nutshell right now and maybe come back to it later. Is when we come into this world and our mind starts to wander, starts to get attached, it goes into tamogun, for example, when we're in a state of anger, you know, our breath gets very shallow. You know, when we're in rajagun, sometimes, you know, basically, as our breath gets imbalanced, our mind gets imbalanced as well. And part of this journey is to balance that breath so we can open that dasam dwar. So when we're doing the Simran, one way that we balance that breath, that bond that's within us, is by doing a mantra that has two parts. So if you're saying Va, He, and there's also the issue of, is it Va, He? Because and I think Benji, who's asked that question, has a very good understanding of the Punjabi language. So, you know, it's a sihari as opposed to, well, I can't even remember, is it lav or dolava? So it's a very subtle sound, vahe. So that's part of it as well. But the main part of it is that ideally it needs to be in two parts or repeating one word, because as we're saying vahe, we're inhaling. And that's the technique that we'll advance to. So you're pulling the tummy in slightly. So you're taking the breath in. And as you're saying guru, you're exhaling that breath. So it becomes difficult to say va, he, and then guru. So there are other techniques where you can break it down. You can say va, he, guru. There's, like Benji saying, there's lots of different techniques, but for me, the simplified version is I'm going to follow the technique that I have been told that works for the person who's telling me. And also now I know that works for me. So for me, it's that inhale, va. And sometimes I say va instead of I. And then guru, it's in that two parts. It's the inhale and the exhale. And that balances that breath. It also balances that breath. And as that breath comes into balance, and we'll talk about Dragon in the coming weeks, you come into this middle point. So we have, like I said, it's technical. We have these subtle channels within our body, which is the Aida, Pingala, Sukhmana. And we have one either side and we have one in the middle. And what we're trying to do is to get into that balance in the middle. And so we need two parts for that. So I really messed up that explanation, but hopefully that makes sense. It's to do with the breath as well. We balance that breath. So we say it in two parts. So for some people, it's helpful to say vai. Sometimes I say va, but it's difficult to say va, he, guru within those two breaths, unless you're going to split it into four. There was some gurmukhs who teach it, splitting it up into that four. But then some people in the community were saying, well, why are you splitting up Vaheguru? So it can get really technical. It can come into that debate. But again, the binti is try it. As you're trying it, as you're doing that practice, it used to be a big thing for me, just like the Benji who's asked that question, why are they saying why instead of this? But as I started to do it as the Sangat around me were doing it, what I found was it really, as Benji said, it really doesn't matter. You can be saying Allah, you can be saying Allahu, Allahu, you can be saying Rama, Rama. But as we've established, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji gave us that Vaheguru mantra. And so that's the mantra that we're chanting. This is not even the first stage of bhakti. This is the preparation. As we're focusing on that sound of our voice, we're taking our mind away from the external world, those 9 doors, or the detaching from those thoughts of the mind. So there's 2 forms of Maya that Benji talked about, the external, the physical world, and that invisible Maya, which are the thoughts of our mind. So we're bringing our attention back again and again to something which is the sound of our voice. And sound is very important as we're on this path. As we focus on that sound of our voice, whichever mantra, however you choose to pronounce it, that's what matters, is can you bring your attention back to that sound? And we're just preparing for that. And then as Benji was describing that Shabad Nodar Thake Tavat Rahai. So we close those 9 doors, we stabilize the mind, Dasave Nijkar Vasapai. Then that 10th gate opens. Othe Anhad Shabad Vajay Dinarati. Then that Shabad, that primordial sound of Vaiguru, which is the sound that's coming from Vaiguru's mouth, which we talk about Panch Shabad. And we're going to go into more detail about what that is. That is what we're aiming for. It's only when we start to hear that internal sound does that bhakti start. Benji, can you remember the bhakti about that? You're on mute, Benji.
Gurmukh Bhagat Jit Sahaj.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Benji. Say again.
Gurmukh Bhagat Jit Sahaj Tun Upji.
Hanji. So you only become the Gurmukh is only starting that bhakti when that sajatun, when that shabad, when that sound inside of them becomes manifest. So this is just the preparation work. So I wouldn't have too many doubts about how am I saying Vaheguru or anything like that, or which mantra am I using. What's important is that you're saying it and you're focusing your mind on it. Like I said, if you split it into 2, it helps with the breath. It helps to balance that breath, which we can go into more detail later. Hanji. So there was also a question about sun, that state of sun. Is that a meditative? Is that what we call the meditative state? So someone's replied and said that's a primal void, in a stillness, being present. So sun basically is this place where we go beyond our body, we go beyond our mind. That's our true home. There's different states of sun. So I'm just aware of the time and how much detail we want to go into. But sun is all around us. That's the first state of sun. That's space, void. It's all around us. Just like air, we can't see it, but it's all around us. The second state of sun is when we do that Simran, we're focusing on the sound, we go beyond our body, we go beyond the thoughts of our mind. And that's what we might call in English language the void. There's lots of mystical traditions. I read a Christian mystical book called The Cloud of Unknowing, and he talks about this great void. If you're into listening to near-death experiences, they also might talk about this void. It's just darkness. It's not scary, but there's a nothingness there. So that's that second stage where we're getting closer to Vaheguru. We're going into the true home of our mind. There's no thought there. There's no connection to our senses. There's no connection to our body. There's utter stillness. From that place is then where we start to hear that Anhad, the Shabad, that becomes Bargat through Maharaji's Kirpa. So we've got to go to that state where we're chanting. And like Benji said, we're going into that state of where we're almost, or feel like we're falling asleep. What differentiates sleep from sun is that we're not having any thoughts anymore. We've done that Simran. We've settled the mind. We're not having any thoughts. And we just go into this state where it's just dark blackness. You might feel like you just fell asleep. But what happens is that's where our mind starts to get washed. That's where we start to hear that Anhad the Shabad. And then I'm not going to go into detail now, but there's further stages of sun. So the third stage of sun is where you're fully hearing that Shabad and you're just putting your dhyan, you're focusing on the Shabad. And then the fourth state of sun is where then you start to see Prakash, you start to see that light of Vaheguru, you start to have that full experience of full love, unconditional love, of complete light, where you don't even know that you're there. There's complete merger, there's complete union. There is no you and God, you and me. There's just that that oneness. So those are the stages in a nutshell that we want to get to. But that first chant is that first stage of chanting, that Bekari Bani, is just that preliminary stage. So if you are doing Simran and you've done Simran for a certain amount of time, your mind is settled and you feel like you're falling asleep, that's a really good thing. So just fall into that sleep, allow yourself to go into that sleep, and then notice when you wake up, notice how your mind is much more calmer, much more peaceful, how you feel different, how you show up differently, because that's really important. Do you want to add anything to that, Benji, before we move on?
There was just one question about should we go into sun when doing our Nithanim? So Nithanim, Barney was meant to be read and done Korj of. So it's better to be awake and connecting with that fully, and then to do the Simran to go into the state of sun. So with Gurbani, it's about really reading but doing Korj. So Hanji, that's what I would suggest.
Hanji. So sorry, there was a question. I still find it hard to disconnect from the external when I do Simran. So the first step is obviously close the eyes, use your ears to listen to the Shabad. Sit in a comfortable position. That's why we emphasize that, because, you know, if you're focusing on your body, you're still focusing on the external. So that's one tip, is make yourself comfortable. It's practice. Practice makes progress. The mind has been uncontrolled for lifetimes, let alone this lifetime. So when we're first doing it, our mind is going to keep going, our retention is going to keep going outside, it's going to keep going into thoughts. But the more you practice it, let's say you do those 10 minutes that we have in the recording. Day 1, you might only settle for 1 second. You know, day 3, you might settle for 5 seconds. By week 4, there might be a whole minute where you're connecting. And so this is not an overnight pill for most people. You know, it's going to take that time of practice, bringing the mind back, building that muscle of the dhyan to bring it back again and again. And the more we do it, the more we practice it every day, and we're consistent with it, the more you'll start to feel into those states where you're not having any thoughts anymore. And then you can go into that zone. So stick with it, take your attention off your body, Notice when your mind goes off and just keep bringing it back. Hanji, I'm having some problems with this chat. It keeps jumping around. So I'm
Sorry,
struggling to see what the next question is.
just to add to that.
Hanji.
So what we're going to understand next week is the internal family. So, we've briefly touched on it, but, we, in this process of trying to connect, we do have entities inside of us that are working against that. And that's just as per the way that the game's been created. So we have these sponge jawed within our bodies, as well as the mind, as well as the Atma. And it's when we try to do the Simran and try to connect, what happens is that those sponge will continue doing their job, their role, to connect us to material realm as opposed to spiritual. And Gurbani tells us the way they connect us to the material realm is through our thoughts. So in Gurbani it says, Panj chor, chitva vikara, maya moka ihipasara. That the Panj will send thoughts, those thoughts that we have that we believe to be ours, that we believe to be coming from some kind of wisdom, those are actually from the Panj. And we'll come to realize and see this slowly, slowly as the weeks progress. So when we do the Simran and we're trying to connect to that state of no thought, which is our true home, the Panj are trying to connect us to material realm, to sending thoughts. So what we do is we give as little less attention to the thoughts as we can. We just keep coming back to that sound of our voice, and you know the all kinds of thoughts will come up, and our job is just to notice, recognize, to understand they're coming from the Panj, and come back to that connection. And slowly, slowly, through doing more Simran in Sangat, we will start to, that connection between the mind and our true home will become stronger, and the impact of those sponge will become a lot weaker.
Right. So sorry. So I'm just aware of time. So I just want to clarify on the technique as we finish off with the Simran now, so we can do that together. Also, this is being recorded. Please join the WhatsApp group, because we'll put the link to this recording on the WhatsApp group as well. And then we also have our Thursday session, which we can ask more questions at if the questions haven't been answered already. So please join the WhatsApp group to get the links to that. So I'm going to try and record this as we do it, and then we can share that recording in the group as well as our practice for this week. So just bear with me for 1 second. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I'm going to invite everybody to close their eyes. So we're closing off those doors to the external world. And we're going to focus Gavya. We're going to chant those praises of Vaheguru. Why? Guru. If you want to say Va, Guru, that's fine. If you want to say Vaheguru, that's fine as well. Gavya, Suniya. And we're going to listen, tune into that sound of our voice. Tunna mein dhyan, dhyana mein janiya. We're going to put our dhyan, our consciousness, our awareness, our focus on the sound of our own voice. So as the thoughts come up, as the discomfort of the body might come up, as soon as you notice that your mind has got distracted, you just bring your mind with love back to the sound of that voice. Gavya, Suniya, Manu rakhiye pao. And we're going to chant with that love, because this journey is about love. Jin prem kiyo, tenehi prab payo. Only those who have loved find that Paramatma. And so as we keep that intention of love, of pyar in our minds, as we chant that name, as we teach the mind to come back again and again, we disconnect from this physical reality, and our mind learns how to go back to its true home, Nijagar, Sajagar. So in addition, what we can do as we chant in two parts, Va, Guru, is as we say Va, you can very slightly pull in your belly button. And as you say Guru, you exhale. So we can try that now. Va, pull in your belly button. Guru, exhale. We're not to get too caught up in how we pronounce this or where am I inhaling? When am I exhaling? The main focus is to focus on the sound and to chant with love. So we're going to do that. Sometimes we get distracted. Those thoughts can become really strong. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to chant faster and louder to bring that mind into attention. Kutta kutta man kasavatti laye. Sometimes we have to beat that mind to bring it in. And then we check, has it settled? And then as we do that Bekri Bani, we chant out loud, holy, holy, slowly, slowly, we'll come into Sej as the mind starts to settle. And we completely relax the body and try to awaken that mind. Simmer, simmer, simmer gura apana, soya man jagai. So by doing the Simran again and again, we awaken that mind from the grips of Maya, from the grips of the external world, of our belief systems, of our limitations, of our attachment to this body and this world. And as that mind awakens, it realizes its true source. It starts to have that experience of peace, of bliss, of love, of Shabad, of darshan, of prakash, and it starts to really know what its true nature is as Jyot Sarup, as that divine light. So again, with your eyes closed, sitting comfortably. If you need the support of your back or a cushion, please do so now. Chanting, bringing your mind back again and again to the sound of the Guru Mantra and chanting with that love. Aao, Karo Kirpa. Wa Guru, 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 Guru, Wa 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 Guru, Guru, Wa 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 Guru, Guru, Wa 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 Guru, wa, 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 Guru, Guru, wa, 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 Guru, Guru, wa, 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 Guru. Chanting with the breath now. Inhaling Vahe, holding the tummy in. Exhaling Guru, release. Antargat, chanting internally. Mind is chanting, mind is listening. you start to get any thoughts or distractions, you can return back to the breath, back to chanting, and then come back to Antargat, the chanting in your mind. Now just listening. Focus on that space around your belly button or the space in front of your face, and just listening, no chanting. महाराज कहते बहुत जन्म बिछड़े थे माधो ए जन्म तुम्हारे लेके कह रविदास आस लग जीवो चिर पयो दर्शन देके. महाराज जी, Ravidas, Bhagat Ravidas ji tells us through Gurbani that for so many lifetimes we've been separated. So let's dedicate this lifetime to reunite, to remerge with our true source, with our true mother and father. Tum Mata Pita, hum barik tere, tumhari kirpa mein sukh ganere. And as we go beyond the body, beyond the thoughts, beyond this identity, and we find our true home, our Nijagar, Sahajagar, and we reunite with our beloved, with our source. Maharaj kehte, thir kar baiso har jan pyare, Satguru tumhare kaaj savare. As we stabilize this mind and go into our true home, we become that devotee. Then Maharaj, Sare Garage Savardhan there, they take care of all of our affairs. And this is our truest purpose, our truest affair, is Gobind Milanki e Teri Bariya. To meet, to merge with that one beloved. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So Gurmukh Pyareo, as we gently start to open our eyes, keeping that attention internal, noticing that change in our state of mind, in our state of body, and throughout the day, as much as we can, as we do our garam, our actions, keeping that dharam, that naam, within our minds and on our tongues as we interact with our families, as we do our jobs, keeping that Vaheguru, chanting, focusing on them in our minds as we do our worldly actions with our eyes open as well. So Inya Bintiya Parvan Ganya Sangat Ji, Mafi, we've gone over a few minutes. If you have more questions, please feel free to join us on Thursday for our Q&A sessions. We will ask a Gurmukh who has more advanced technical knowledge than us to also join and maybe share some of the techniques. But for now, the binti is to keep doing that practice every day. And as you'll see, as we continue to do that practice and we notice those changes within ourselves, within our experience, you know, some of these technical questions, they become less important because we're starting to have that experience. And then our focus becomes single focused, ikman, ikajit. And we start to realize that this is real, this is true, this is not just a story, this is not about the technical or the knowledge, it's about that experience of Sach, of Paramatma, of Vaheguru, that is so close to us. Gobind Pao Bhagat Tapukha, the only thing that Vaheguruji wants for us is to realize that love they have for us and for us to experience that for ourselves. So this is not about right or wrong or good or bad or judgment. It's about returning to that source which is open to all of us. So forgive us for any mistakes. Please join us again next week. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.